Hello, and welcome to my review of the second studio album by Florence and the Machine, Ceremonials. This album was released on the 28th of October of 2011. I felt fitting to record the review of this album given that Florence's 31st birthday was just 2 days ago. I am so excited to talk about this record. Well, it's the album that introduced me to Florence and the Machine. I wasn't really familiar with her before this album came out. And I also wasn't exactly following the release of it. It just sort of happened to be on iTunes. I just was curious. I liked the album art. And I was like, I've heard of her before. What's this album about? And then I had to buy the whole album. And it was just like, oh my God, this is not what I was expecting at all. This album is so much less indie than Lungs was. And don't get me wrong, I love Lungs. But there was something that maybe wasn't so eye-catching for me about it because it was a little bit more indie rock, which not to say, isn't bad. It's just not so much my style. And so this record is a lot more chamber pop sounding. It's got some pop sensibilities, but it's more classical, it's more orchestral, it's more choral based. It's got a lot of soul influences, so it's a very soulful album. I think the lyrics are 1,000 times stronger than they were on Lungs. I just think the songwriting is so exquisite and so deeply powerful. It's such a relentless record. It really doesn't, it picks you up and it doesn't let you go until the end of the 16 songs. You almost feel exhausted by the end of the record. I remember listening to it and feeling physically and emotionally exhausted because the songs are mostly so high energy and loud, and they're just, you can dance to them, you can exercise to them. They're very cathartic in almost all of them. And that's what this album is, and that's why I think it's so fitting that the album is called Ceremonials, because this album to me is really about exorcism. This album is about absolution. This album is about spells and witchcraft. They're rituals to cleanse yourself or to heal yourself or to create some change in your life. And so this record is meant to kind of be like an exercise. It's meant to work you out. It's meant to get you to shake out, like the lead single, all of your demons. The first song on this record, Only If For a Night, is inspired by a dream that Florence had one night where her dead grandmother came to speak to her as a ghost and gave her some very practical life advice. And she has a line in the song where she talks about, "I never thought a ghost could be so practical." And the song then frames itself around that encounter and sort of goes into all of these sort of different areas. It's Only If For a Night kind of is an interesting title because it's even if it's just this one time I have this meeting, these important words that I heard really stayed with me and made me realize I need to work on myself and change myself. The song slowly builds and builds to become, again, another big, soulful, chamber pop sounding song. It's not my favorite song on the record, but it opens up very well, giving you a taste and flavor of all of the different sounds you're going to hear. You're going to hear some beautiful piano. You're going to hear some amazing choral melodies. It's got all of those things played in. You've got an amazing rhythmic drum section, very reminiscent of Kate Bush. You hear that sound in that as well. But it was the second single released from the record, but the second song on this album, Shake It Out, is so cathartic. This song is literally an exorcism. So I saw Florence live, actually, on her How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful tour in 2016, and she performed this song. And before she sang it, it really stuck with me when she said...
So I was wondering if this evening you would be our choir. Okay, this is going to be good. This is a big choir, but I'm going to give you your intention. This is where you're singing from. You are very hungover and quite scared. When I wrote this song, I felt like I needed a choir to absolve me, to exercise me. And I wonder if you would be that choir this evening. Okay, we can all get free.
It so beautifully illustrates how she was feeling. She's talking about literally through dance, or maybe through, I don't know, maybe through partying, maybe through frivolous behavior, or maybe through something a little bit more kind of spiritually based. She's talking about casting away your demons to see the light of day at the end of the tunnel. It's always darkest before the dawn. She keeps talking about how she keeps dragging this horse around. It's got such a, break the chains message. And the music video is so beautifully directed and beautifully shot with her in this elegant, stately manor house, throwing this party, this masquerade ball, and no one really knows who each other is. But there's this feeling of wanting to break out, to be yourself, to cast out some of these things. She almost is performing the exorcism in the video. And it just so fits it. I mean, I would just shout this song at the top of my lungs, and at the concert, it was so, fulfilling to be able to be around a lot of other people and feel the energy of this song, because it is so high energy. And then, of course, the best part is at the end where she does the vocal riff, which is so triumphant. It reminds me of the ending of Mother from How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful. She does a similar vocal thing where she's sort of like triumphantly singing about her overcoming this darkness and this transformation that's taking place. So the next song kind of takes things back a little bit. So we got introduced to the big sounds of this record, but now we're going to sort of be a little bit more insidious. We're going to sort of slowly build to something with What the Water Gave Me. This was the first single that was released from the album. This is a little bit more of an abstract song, and it actually bears a lot of technical analysis to it because it's a little harder to dissect. Sonically, this song is a little bit more indie in its sound than the other songs. It's a little bit more rock-based, and with some guitar and with some, she was inspired by this to write this song by a painting by Frida Kahlo called also What the Water Gave Me. She said it was such a moving painting, this woman in a bathtub, and there's all of these things in her life just sitting on the surface of the water. She was also inspired by the poet Virginia Woolf as well. So she said that these things all kind of culminated together, and she was really singing about water, which is a recurring theme in this record. She sings a lot about water, so much so that it was actually hilarious because in her third album when she was recording, her producers and co-songwriters were like, we can only let you sing one song about water. No water in the rest of this because you always sing about water. It's a metaphor you always use. So let's try and strip that away. So the only song that really touches on that is Ship to Wreck. And then the rest of the album, she tries to stray from that, which I thought was really interesting. This song is, so rich in its meaning. And oh, poor Atlas, the world's a beast of a burden. She's talking about Atlas who carried the world on his shoulders. And all this longing and all the ships are left to rust. That's what the water gave us. So lay me down, let the only sound be the overflow. Pockets full of stones, so I guess you're sinking to the bottom of the river. Lay me down, let the only sound be the overflow. And the way she sings that, I mean, it's so sonorous and so rich, especially when she sings overflow. And the image is very gospel sounding. It's got some religious connotations about baptism, but it's not hitting you over the head with that. It also is saying, like, let me sink to the bottom of the ocean, let me, or the bottom of the lake, and let me, with my pocket full of stones, just let the water overcome me. Water has played a huge part in the shaping of our world, and she's playing homage to the flowing of water, basically. Ships, pockets full of stones, all of these things culminate to that. And so I think it was really well crafted as a song. But then we come to my favorite song on the album. This was the song that made me fall in love with Florence and the Machine. It's called Never Let Me Go, and it was, I believe, the fourth single released from this record with an amazing music video. Never Let Me Go, literally, I don't want you to ever let me go. Like, this song holds you in its arms, and it cradles you, and it rocks you, and it changes you fundamentally. And when I first heard this song, I just could not fathom just how richly composed and how anthemic this song really was in all of its multi-layered kind of ways of speaking. It's an ode to hymn music, it's an ode to church music, it's an ode to gospel, it's an ode to soul music, but it's so much more than that. The sound and atmosphere of the production and the way her voice changes, it makes you sound like she's in like some vast environment. I always envisioned her singing this song on the edge of a cliff, which is why when the music video came out, I was a little surprised that it was actually filmed at like an ice rink, and like she's sort of like a janitor, and she's just like in these like kind of nondescript clothes, and there's these two people on the ice rink dancing, but then she kind of dissolves into the ice rink and into the garbage, and it's a really strange abstract music video, and it's not what I expected, but It works very well for the song, but the song is very broad and open, and it does make you think of a sweeping, English or Irish or Scottish coastline with the rocks and the wind blowing and, singing Never Let Me Go at the edge of the cliffs. It has that vibe, and so I always envisioned that. It's a song that just is so much broader than could be possibly contained into just like a 3.5 minute or 4 minute song. And she's singing about drowning in the ocean. So, going off of what the water gave me, she wants to throw herself to the ocean, like throw herself off the cliff, metaphorically, probably more so than literally, and feel all of the sea like change and, wrap its arms around her. She talks about water as being so comforting and it's peaceful in the deep because either way, you cannot breathe. Like I can't breathe up here. So, in the air, I can't breathe in this life. So, I also can't breathe down there. So what difference does it make? No need to pray, no need to speak. Now I am under. And the way she sings, you really do feel like you're being submerged, like you're being dunked underwater. There's just so much amazing, lyrical and sonic kind of tie-ins to the theme of this song that it's just so well conceived and very cohesive. And again, beautiful melody, haunting melody, actually. Just everything about this, she sings about cathedrals, hearkening to like going to church and having a spiritual experience. Everything is checked in this song for me, and it's the best song on the album, hands down. We come to the next song, Breaking Down. This changes up the sound of the record kind of a bit. This song is a little bit more classical in its classic rock sort of characteristic. It's sort of stomping and makes you kind of feel good. It's got like this sort of like, I think I'm breaking down again. It's sort of like analyzing herself psychologically and sort of like why she's going through all of these tumultuous things in her life. She's talking about her childhood. She sings about how she was always alone as a child, and she said that there was always something to be frightened of. So she's realizing how all these things, past and present, are coming together. It's a really audacious song. It really pierces, and I appreciate it for that. And it's got a really catchy melody, so it's catchy. It's something you can really have fun singing along to. It's cathartic. It's anthemic. Again, all of these songs, I'm going to end up saying the same things. The next song, Lover to Lover, which was the final single off of this record, this is definitely classic like rock from like the 60s. Like this song, she says it's like what the band would have sounded like 50 years ago, and she's so true. This song stands out from the rest of the record sonically because it's a lot more in that kind of indie rock vibe. And she's singing about how there's a destructive nature in her to want to go from lover to lover and never settle down or never find who real love is. And she also kind of said when she was writing the song, it was kind of interesting. She kind of wanted to write it from like a male perspective because it is sort of like something that you would have a lot of men sing about is, hopping from lover to lover. It's not something a woman would necessarily feel comfortable singing about or in the past be able to sing about because, this song it's hearkening to sort of a male womanizing sort of behavior. And so I think that this song, she's sort of maybe embodying that character a little bit. Maybe she's not really directly talking about herself, but she is kind of metaphorically speaking about her destructive sort of never kind of clutching onto something long enough sort of behaviors and alluding it to a man who is very unfaithful. It's a very unique song for the rest of the record. Okay, so now we come to a song that is, again, huge in its sound. One of the songs that will literally just take your breath away. No Light, No Light. This music video is almost what made the song even more powerful for me. The imagery of her falling through the church, the imagery of her laying amongst all these jewels as if asleep, trying to wake up, the imagery of the male choir singing in the church. This song kind of embodies thematically all of the things that she's singing about on this record. She's singing about a relationship that's falling apart, that's no longer working at the surface. But beyond that, she's singing so much more about some sort of spiritual revelation that she's going through. And so the music video does come under fire for some controversial blackface portrayed by someone conducting voodoo. And I know Florence, and I know that's not what she was going for. You have to remember, it's also not just Florence, it's the director of the music video, and so they're not like always one person coming up with these ideas. But I see this as more like someone painting themselves, like not like literally pitch black, as if they're like literally a demon and dark. I don't view it as something culturally, ethnically related, but I do see how that could be something that gets people upset. And maybe if I was Florence, maybe I would have tried to hide that a little bit more and make it a little bit less like it could have been blackface, because it is controversial. And I do not want my dear Florence to come under fire for things like that, because it is so far from who she is. And she's so intelligent. She knows what she's doing. You are the hole in my head. You are the space in my bed. You are the silence in between what I thought and what I said. You are the nighttime fear. You are the morning when it's clear. When it's over, your start. You're my head. You're my start. No light in your bright blue eyes. I never knew daylight could be so violent. A revelation in the light of day. You can choose what stays and what fades away, and I'd do anything to make you stay. So, in a way, it's her, like, begging on her knees, basically, for this man to stay. But she had no idea it was going to be this difficult. And so, she's expressing, like, all of these deep, primal feelings that she has in this very cathartic manner. And you just feel the emotion. It's such an emotional song, and it really builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, and then it like has a little bit of a drop where she's like singing, and it sort of like, and you can hear the drums, and then it just comes back down again. Very beautifully done. Okay, let's get to another song here. Now this one is really witchy. This one's really dark. It's the darkest song on the record, and it's called Seven Devils. I've been really interested in the meaning of this song because I'm very intrigued by the like sort of witchcraft elements of this song. It fits very well into the title and theme of this record. From what I understand, she could be alluding to the seven deadly sins, but I think she also is referencing how Jesus cast out seven devils from Mary Magdalene. But she's singing this song in a way where she's saying, I don't want to be saved. I want to surrender to my seven devils. I want to surrender to my darkness, and I want retribution. I want revenge on this ex-lover who's wronged her. She says, I'm going to tear your kingdom down. Holy water cannot help you now. 1,000 armies couldn't keep me out. I don't want your money. I don't want your crowd. See, I have to burn your kingdom down. Seven devils all around you. Seven devils in my house. See, they were there when I woke up this morning, and I'll be dead before the day is gone. She's saying basically, this is a one-time thing. Come morning, I will be cleaned. I will be purified because I let out all of this darkness. But it's coming, and you better be prepared. And now all of your love will be exercised, and we will find you saints to be canonized. And it's an even sum. I thought it was evensong, but it's interesting reading these like lyrics, because I thought it was evensong, hearkening to like an evening prayer, which would have fit into the theme of this song very well. But it's an even sum. It's a melody. It's a battle cry. It's a symphony. This song is very on edge. It's edgy. It's dark and mellifluous. It's malevolent and it's brooding. It's perfect, and it's something that I love to see Florence experiment with, because it doesn't feel evil. It just expresses the darkness within human nature, and how we all want to seek revenge sometimes. We all feel jaded, or we all feel like casting a spell. And I'm totally for it. I can imagine a music video for this song would have been so beautiful and so haunting, and I can only wish it did get one. Alrighty, so next we have Heartlines. This was a song that initially, because of the melody, really grabbed me when I first listened to this record. Now it's kind of funny. It's one of those things where the initial songs that grab you maybe fade away in the like later on, and I don't end up coming back to this song so much. She's singing about following the heart lines in your hand. This song is very hopeful. This song is about moving forward. This song is her singing in a very triumphant manner. Just keep following your dreams. Just keep following who you are. And all of the things in nature are pointing to it. She says, I see it in the entrails of the animals. I see it in you. I see it in the flights of birds. It's such a, again, it's going back to that witchy kind of pagan aesthetic that she sort of hints at in a lot of these songs. But I love that she's using it in sort of such a uplifting way, contrasting Seven Devils, which was so dark and brooding. The next song, which was one of the last singles of this record, is called Spectrum, Say My Name. This is another super, super powerful, uplifting, bombastic track. very danceable. The music video has her dancing with the choreography and everything. It's one of the more choreographed visuals that she's ever done. When we first came here, we were cold and we were clear, with no colors on our skin. We were light and paper thin, until we let the spectrum in. Say my name, and every color illuminates. We are shining, and we will never be afraid again. This is a call for unity. This is a call to see beyond color, whether that's figuratively or literally, if she's talking about skin color. And also, I view this song as also an anthem for the LGBT movement, because when she sang this song in at the How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful tour, it was actually right after the Orlando shooting, and she got out a rainbow flag and waved it around as she sang this song. And you know, this song is about all the colors, the spectrum. And so this song to me is like an ode to that. And I'll never kind of see it as anything else, but this song definitely isn't purely about that. And at first, not what I thought. It's basically saying, come together. We're so much more than these divisions that we make of ourselves. And it has one thing I have to say. This song employs the harp, which I live for. She doesn't use the harp as much on this record as she did on Lungs, but she starts out this record with this beautiful harp, and then she ends with some of the most beautiful harp playing. I mean, it just ends it in such a playful, dancey, almost Celtic way. The song feels very Celtic. There's a lot of Celtic Irish music undertones to a lot of this album, and I was really intrigued by that. But I love the harp. I'm a sucker for it. So the harp playing at the end just made my heart like, oh, it drew me in so well. Spectrum is a highlight for this record for sure. You cannot help but dance and just twirl around like a crazy person, belting Say My Name, you know? Okay, then we come to All This in Heaven Too. The lyrics of this song are so well crafted. She's singing about how she can't literally write anymore, about how she feels, you know, like all these words, the poetry, it doesn't mean anything. I would give everything, including heaven, including the promise of heaven, to try and understand the meaning of the world you see. She's trying to reconcile all of her emotions in this song, and she's trying to make sense of it all. Because believe me, how on earth can you put pen to paper on some of these deep primal emotions and express them in a way, especially to a lover or someone you're interested in, how this feels? And it feels like All of This and Heaven Too. And I love that title because it feels just so like open to interpretation, and it feels just like laying it all out on the table, like saying like, this is how deep this goes. The well is deep, and I have done really deep for this record, and she certainly has. The final track on the standard edition is called Leave My Body. This is a very gospel, soul-inspired track. She's basically singing about transcending the darkness of her past, transcending, possibly in a spiritual sense, her physical form. It's a very, you know, closing the album kind of aesthetic, where she then ends with this very ghostly atmospheric breakdown, which is so haunting and beautiful to listen to. So it ends the album on a really spiritual note, and I love that about it. And it has this really interesting flute instrument at the beginning that feels kind of Native American, which I love about that as well, because again, there's this pagan feeling to this song. There's this witchy vibe to it, and there's this strange atmospheric distortion to her voice, where it really does feel like it was filmed outside in a forest or in a cave. There's that feeling of it being so outdoors and so raw and so organic. Then I have to talk about the deluxe tracks on this record, because they are also super, super important. We have a song called Remain Nameless. This song is so unique from the rest of the record. It's electronic. It's sparse for once. There's not, you know, there is one word you cannot use to describe this record, and sparse is definitely that word. There's nothing sparse about this record or the production, but this one song is really sparse, and it's just her kind of like unevenly singing over this pulsating beat, and then it kind of starts to drive, and it really feels witchy and edgy and like kind of unnerving, and I love that about it. It's a very left field track, and I can see why she didn't want to include it on the main album, but I love that it did get a place in the final version. Then we have a song called Strangeness and Charm. Oh boy, this song, oh my god. I mean, it's dark, but it's light. I don't know what to say about this song. I tried reading about it, and even Florence doesn't really know what this song is entirely about, because it has a lot of, unique vocal pairings and a lot of unique lyrical content. It feels to me again like it's elaborating on the feeling of love and ecstasy and all the darkness around it that can make you feel high and then low and high and then low again. It's strangeness and charm, you know? How else can you say? And then we come to the last song, Bedroom Hymns. This is the one song where Florence is getting very sexual here. She's basically alluding to sex as like a confessional and being on her knees. You know, I'm a sinner, so absolve me and let's get hot and heavy here. And it's so pounding and it's so sexual and rhythmic. Again, Kate Bush vibes. Oh, it's a beautiful sort of way of her illustrating like this sort of Catholic kind of feeling of feeling guilty and feeling like you need to do penitence or repent for your sins, and also like guiltily feeling like you need a man to, you know, give you ecstasy. You know, like it ties those through two things so well. And she says, "Call me your Maria, I'm already on your knees." So it's a little bit like, I don't know, it's dark. It's like I'm using biblical references, but I'm talking about sex. It's edgy, you know, it's punk. And so for that, you know, I would expect that from Florence because she's not necessarily always going to actually always play the good girl. She always admits, even though she's such a pure and innocent person, she has no trouble admitting her darkness and her faults. And this is a thing that plays across on all of her records, is that she never shies away from talking about how dark she could get, or how, you know, in a sort of cautionary way, she talks about her darkness. It's always cautionary though. And she always ends up, you know, letting you know that she knows that this is bad. She knows that she's trying to improve herself. And, you know, if you thought of Florence, you think of this sweet, kind of innocent, she has a very soft voice. She's this delicate, beautiful woman. But she really tries in her music to be this like, oh, this powerhouse, this diva who is like no holds barred. And I like that juxtaposition between her actual image and her music, because it really does let you know that she's an introverted person at heart, but through her music she's able to express all this pain and anger and power and raw emotion. And so all this is the theme that I had to address on all of her records. It would definitely apply to How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful as well. Overall, I will say this album is stupendous. It still is kind of one of my favorite albums of hers. I mean, I love How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful. How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful is more stripped back. It's trying to be a little bit less like in your face like Ceremonials was. And maybe it's stripping down some of the ritualistic metaphors and all of the like, you know, crystals and gems kind of feel of it. But this album feels very cohesive. It's a body of work. Maybe because I always first listened to it as a body of work and not just as singles leading up to it, it will always feel like this one like powerful thing, you know, where each song bleeds into the next. She got so much more recognition for Spectrum because of that Calvin Harris remix, because this album definitely got her a little bit more like mainstream focus and attention, and it got her some deserving awards. So overall, very high praise for this record. Very high praise. Listen to it. You will be sweating by the end of this record because you can't help but dance the demons out. So let me know what you thought, Florence fans, about this record. I will review Lungs, and if you want to see what I thought about How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful, I will link in the description my review of that album, which I also highly praise. So let me know what you thought, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Bye.